Okay, I'm here with Jeffrey Herbener now for our podcast. He's a professor of economics at Grove City College, and very glad to have you. You're concentrating this week on microeconomics and what other issues?
Right, a little bit on Keynes and some work on time and uncertainty in human action.
Yeah.
So, and then I got the one lecture on the American Austrians.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, so a little bit of history.
Yeah. So you're dealing with all the difficult technical topics that require extraordinary precision, right?
Well, they all do.
Okay. But these aren't the topics that normally drive people to Austrian economics. And nonetheless,
this is true.
Yeah. Really, you agree with that? Yeah.
I think that's right.
Yeah, people don't become Austrians
because they want to know about time. They're interested in the minutiae of uncertainty.
Yeah. They're forever this whole question of time preference. We are not going to have an interview on time preference, but as much as everybody might like that, I find anyway the subject is so difficult, and you have to throw yourself into literature completely and just really think about it constantly. And then you can sort of get it and engage in the controversies, and you become obsessed with it. But if you're away from it for too long, I mean, is it just me, or do you forget everything?
It isn't a memorable subject. It is a highly technical subject, and a lot's been written about it, and a lot of it's confused and difficult to untangle the fallacies and to see the kernel of truth.
Written about it, meaning interest rates or time preference?
Even both, I would say. Even the conceptions of time preference of some writers are not really quite right.
Within the Austrian tradition?
Even in the broader literature, but I would say even within the Austrian tradition. I think the central idea that Mises had of time preference being bound up in temporal finitude of our animal nature. He said that time preference, even animals have time preference.
Yeah.
That there's something like categorical time preference that exists as a fundamental concept of acting.
And how do you show that? And
not many people agree with this or incorporate this insight into their
What's the
work.
quick refutation of the claim that that's not true?
Well, Mises says that if this weren't true, a person would have or could have an infinite time horizon, and temporal beings cannot have infinite time horizons.
Right.
And that's his claim.
So you now the Rothbardian perspective doesn't differ substantially or in any respect from the Misesian view.
Not that I know of. Rothbard doesn't stress this categorical nature of time preference, but from the beginning of the definition of the operative notion of time preference to interest is all the same.
Well, now Rothbard relied a lot on the writings of Frank Fetter.
Right.
Mises did as well?
Mises did as well. Cites Fetter in Human Action.
Yeah.
Fetter was the great purifier of the doctrine from boehm-bawerk.
Yeah, and boehm-bawerk needed some assistance in this regard.
Well, this is Mises' view, yes. It's a controversial question. But,
among whom is this?
We won't name names.
So how many issues are just still deeply controversial? You find yourself stepping into dangerous territory.
And as you said before, not exactly earth-shattering or obvious appeal to everyone.
So do we need a Fetter shirt, do you think, at some point?
We do need it. Well, We would have something like a fellow travelers list.
Well, we got a Knock shirt. I mean, it's unclear.
Well, there you go.
So I don't know.
A Fetter shirt would be great.
Yeah, Fetter shirt would be great. Yeah, because there's a marketability issue. But who would have thought that?
That's true. Yeah. There was with all of it.
Yeah. Well, actually, one of the most popular selling T-shirts. I'm not T-shirt obsessed, just to tell you that. I don't think only about T-shirts, but one of the most
shaving
popular.
Cream.
Other issues. That's right. Yeah. But the boehm-bawerk shirt really does sell very well.
It
really does.
It's the slogan.
Structure of production. That really attracts people, I think. Yeah, that's a real draw.
That's great.
Yeah. Okay, let me ask you about Keynes. The controversy recently on the blog, I don't know if it's even worth noting, but some people were claiming that Hazlitt's commentary on the general theory is not not really to be taken seriously. What's your sense?
Well, I would say off the top of my head that almost everything that Hazlitt wrote is to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
That has to be grappled with.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a rather pedestrian exercise to go through his book because it delves. I mean, it's line by line refutation, and so it's very tedious
for the reader.
Yes. Yeah. So it isn't a grand critique. Something like what I think is the best article written on Keynes that Joe Salerno did a number of years ago.
Interest rate issue.
And
focused on.
Well, it's kind of his Keynes's development of his thought in this sort of progressive utopian millennialism.
Yeah.
And from Marshall. And
he makes
so
a lot out of the fact that Keynes sort of hoped that you could have a world without interest.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and that this would kind of drove him to the idea that he fixated on was the elimination of the scarcity of capital. And so to do this, of course, interest had to be eliminated.
Right.
Keynes didn't necessarily believe that, say, central banking could drive it to zero.
Right.
And so we'd have to have socialization of the financial markets to eliminate all sources of interest. And
to elaborate on your point about what Mises said concerning time preference, this would imply immortality, wouldn't it? Right?
Yeah, among other strange things.
Yeah, very interesting.
That's right.
Did Hazlitt pick up on this point about interest?
About interest, I don't. It's not fresh in my mind. His book. I read it years ago. I don't recall.
It's not in print.
It isn't.
No, it's not in print. But it's interesting that he sort of took up the job of taking on Keynes in such detail.
Yeah, in '59, and then in 1960, of course, he came out with the edited book, Critics of Keynesian Economics.
Right. But it's so interesting that all these critics, these Austrian critics of Keynes, sort of emerged much later. Doesn't it seem as if Keynes came along in a window? He had a sort of he sort of slipped into the history of ideas in a strange way, because the Austrians really kind of many of them, they were sort of dismissive of this as just being a regurgitation of old fallacies, right?
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, there was an odd constellation of elements that brought about Keynes's prominence. Not the least of which had nothing to do with his economics. It had to do with his cosmic vision of things, and his sort of utopianism. Yeah. And the circles that he ran in. Yeah. His sort of elitist. British groups.
They were strange times in the 1930s. I mean, there's a lot of sort of apocalyptic political thinkers running around. As far as I'm always impressed when you read any of the newspapers of the time and the political editorials and journals. I mean, the idea of liberal democracy was completely dismissed by all sides. It's just not even worth consideration.
Totally dead. That's right.
Isn't that strange?
Yeah, very strange.
This is a strange time.
It was indeed.
Yeah.
It was indeed.
Gave rise to a lot of peculiar ideologies, and Keynes was one of them. Now, somebody might say, look, you Austrians are just forever obsessing about Keynes. Nobody cares about Keynes anymore. What do you think about that?
Oh, no, this is not true. He spawned 1,000 devils, right? I mean, Keynesian ideas are everywhere. And they have to be, in every generation, these battles have to be refought. Yeah. The ground has to be retaken. Yeah. After all, we're still writing articles against the minimum wage. Yeah. Right? I mean, these fallacies just don't go away. Yeah. They're new people, and they constantly have to learn these things, and they've already been indoctrinated into these fallacies.
Yeah. So. It is peculiar about Keynesianism. What do you think gives rise to the suggestion? I've heard it many times that Austrians just should shut up about Keynes. It's over with. Is it because people have a limited perception about the influence of Keynes? I mean, it's true that the sort of the dumbed down version of Keynesianism doesn't persist in the journals.
That's a good point. Yeah, I'd say that's right. That's right. Yeah, it's just the bits and pieces that survive and are grasped by the mainstream. Yeah. But the vision isn't. Yeah, the vision's long gone.
What's an example of that, would you say? What's a bit and piece of...
Oh, it would just be, say macro aggregation.
Yeah.
Would be one example.
Mm-hmm.
In the mainstream, just this is just how they think about macroeconomics, and they wouldn't necessarily even consider it Keynesian.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so common that it's not even called by its real name. Yeah, that's interesting. And of course the business press.
Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah.
They're all aggregate demand.
Yeah.
Well, not all of them, but I mean, they overwhelmingly are just bought into this aggregate demand view of what makes the economy work and how the government has to stimulate aggregate demand and the Fed policy and the whole thing. It's
Fed
all
policy is entirely still. It continues. And what about fiscal policy?
Yeah, it seems like in this day and age, fiscal policy's taken a backseat, and nobody worries about it. Bush runs these huge deficits, and it seems like nobody criticizes it on economic grounds anymore.
Right, and nor is fiscal policy usually invoked.
As a stabilizer of the economy.
Yeah, it's not,
No, it's not.
No,
it's all Fed. It's all the Fed.
It's all Fed. It's come down the Fed. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that the spending policy. I mean, it's just the Congress should just spend as much as possible.
Sure.
As long as they don't cause an immediate calamity, then everybody's happy, and that's the whole.
There are other good things that have to be done, so more money to spend. Another war that has to be fought.
Yeah. No such thing as fiscal policy anymore. Was this the most naive view that Keynes held, that somehow fiscal policy could be used for macroeconomic planning?
Well, he wasn't really too intrigued with that view. That came from his followers.
Yeah.
He was really dedicated to this notion of eliminating interest, as you talked about before, and through the socialization of the financial markets.
Yeah.
That was really his main policy position.
Yeah.
Fiscal policy was a minor thing. He liked the idea, for example, of say having a progressive income tax, because he thought the MPC, the propensity to consume of the poor people, was larger than rich, and so this would give us greater aggregate demand.
Yeah.
But again, this wasn't like a solution to the fundamental problems of capitalism for him.
Yeah. So this passage in the General Theory where Keynes calls for the socialization of investment is sometimes written off as a slip, but you're arguing that it's.
Oh, I think absolutely it's
the conclusion.
Exactly. Yeah, I think Joe Salerno made this abundantly clear in his article.
Right.
It's the policy solution that Keynes would like to invoke, but practical politics permit only, let's say, expansionary monetary policy or some other makeshift, in his view, to push interest rates down.
Yeah.
But I think if he could have held the levers of power and pulled them, I think he would have pulled that lever. Yeah, and not the others.
Now you teach undergraduates.
That's right.
Smart kids?
Very good kids.
Really?
Our students at Grove City are very good.
Are they?
Yeah, very smart. We get a nice handful that are very interested in ideas. We've had a couple lately go on to grad school, so we're real happy with the students that we get.
When you teach, do you teach with an eye to preparing people for graduate school?
Depends on what you mean by preparing. Our view is to ground them as solidly as we can in correct economics. So we don't prepare them in sort of a practical sense to do the math and so on. We require the standard kinds of math and statistics, but our push really is to ground them in real economics, because when they get to grad school, they don't do economics.
Yeah.
They just do model building.
I see. Right. So it's your chance to teach it.
That's right. We have to teach them, and then we hope that the PhD work is just an interlude. And they come out on the other side. They remember their economics. They get back to it. Right? They go back to what attracted them to economics to begin with.
Yeah. And you've built something of a program there, right?
Right. I think so. And we're right now this summer putting together the final proposal for our master's program.
Wow.
So in 2, maybe 3 years, we should have the master's program.
And will that be the first graduate program at Grove City?
It will be. In the past they've had masters of accounting, programs, but these were just makeshifts that they needed to meet requirements of accounting agencies that required a certain number of hours, and so they were just tack-on programs. They weren't really philosophically connected to the college or done with an eye toward furthering the mission of the college.
Right. Yeah. So you do have some sense that you have the support of
definitely.
the administration, which is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, the support of the administration is very strong. Bill Anderson's the provost, and he's a big backer of the Austrian school.
There you go. Right.
And the board, many board members who are students of Hans Sennholz.
Yeah.
And they support this.
Yeah, and Hans Sennholz taught for so many years there.
Yeah, 36 years.
Yeah, extraordinary. Yeah, in so many ways built the program. And was he responsible for the fact that the Mises papers are there?
Right. He acquired them from Margit in 1978, so it was 5 years after Mises died.
Yeah. Have you had an archivist? You have.
Yeah, an archivist came in 1992.
Okay.
And went through, organized the collection, put it in acid-free boxes, and so on.
Right, that's hard work.
Yes,
very difficult. It's so essential.
Absolutely essential, and we actually want to have it done again. We want to create electronic storage for it.
It's one of those things. Archival work, it's so hard to make it an institutional priority. You have to just dig down. There's always other ways to use the resources that seem more, immediate, to meet more immediate needs and to serve a larger community of people. There's every reason not to do this archival work, and yet.
But it's a treasure, and it has to be protected.
Yeah.
And people recognize that in the administration. But like you say, it doesn't rise to a high priority.
Yeah, it's tough. So you're looking at an electronic index at least, and maybe even the real thing.
That would be the goal at the end, of the process.
Are you involved in this process?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So you spend some time in the
papers? My! Yeah.
Do you really?
Oh yes.
What do you get out of that?
Oh, it's wonderful. It's amazing.
Really?
It's astounding. I mean, the things that the correspondence that he engaged in, and profundity of his writings. Even casual things, right? He's just writing, a personal letter to Hayek or something, and he has these great insights.
Do you have a different impression of him having gone through his correspondence than a person might have of having read his books?
I'm not sure it's different. It's deeper.
Yeah.
You sort of appreciate his other facets of Mises that you may not see if you're just reading his scholarly work, like his love letters to Margit.
Ooh! Wow! I suddenly occurred to me. I wonder, if Mises had imagined that someday,
someone would sit down and read these things. Yeah, it's kind of creepy in a way, but
be careful what you write.
That's exactly right. Well, if you're that sort of a person, right?
Yeah.
Person of his stature.
Yeah.
But I think he did realize this, right? I think he did realize that posterity would be interested in him.
Yeah.
And so
I don't know. I wonder sometimes because those last years of his life, the late '60s, early '70s, things weren't going so well for the Austrian school.
Mm-hmm.
But he always said that things can change, that trends can change. So maybe he knew.
They have.
Yeah, and they have. Yeah. Now, what's this? I hear about some course that you're teaching with Guido Hulsmann. What's that about?
Oh, right. Yes. So Guido put together this international economics course, and we had him come to Grove City and teach our students we called the course globalization. Just we already have an international econ course in our curriculum, and so he came for 2 weeks and taught, and then Sean Rittenauer and I taught the rest of the course, and the students, of course, are just thrilled to have Guido. He's great.
Yeah, sure. He's
it was wonderful.
He's a very
just wonderful
scholar, isn't he? Yeah.
And then he invited me this fall to go to Angers and return the favor. So I'll be there for about 2 weeks and teach it. Just a small segment of the course.
Yeah. Well, now I don't understand how this works. Does this mean that his students are enrolled in your class and your students in his?
No. It's all Grove City was all my students, and in Angers it's all his. Now maybe in the future we could do that. In the future it'd be better if I took my students and we cross-enroll in the course. And we'd have to stay longer and so on.
Or maybe just everybody get on Skype and have some big internet meeting. I don't know.
And Guido wants to actually write about turn out some articles about this because I think he's correct that international economics is not a field where the Austrians have swept the whole horizon. Right. We've sort of write about particular issues, but there isn't like a full-blown Austrian theory of international trade.
It's funny. I somehow have some memory now of asking somebody what do the Austrians have to contribute to the international trade discussion beyond what the neoclassical school has contributed, and the answer is essentially nothing. It's the same thing.
No, you should just to see his syllabus, and you would know it is not the same thing.
Now, who are what thinkers would you say from the Austrian tradition have most broadly explored the trade issue and applied a unique kind of Austrian point of view?
That's a good question.
Habler?
Habler? Just Salerno has done work in this area.
Yeah.
But the masters, really didn't.
What about Rübke?
If you consider him Austrian, I guess.
Let's have a big argument about who is and isn't an Austrian.
That's true.
That's funny.
You end up looking like George Reisman.
Yeah. Well, but there's a wonderful. He wrote 2 great books on the subject. But maybe you would consider them more political.
Yeah. Well, I don't. As good as he was, I don't think he was Austrian in the Misesian sense. He was certainly sympathetic and a fellow traveler, but he's not exactly a praxeologist.
Right.
So my definition is narrow enough that probably
I remember Rothbard used to come to this conference, and he always gave a talk at the end. And of course, Rothbard was not one to avoid controversy. He created it.
Yes.
But he would always give this talk where he said, to be an Austrian is to be a praxeologist, which is always a...
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
I think he's right.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Yeah. On the topic of globalization, people use the term so differently. It's almost... some people refer to globalization. For example, if you oppose a war, they call you an isolationist. You say, no, I'm in favor of international trade.
Right.
For everybody. I'm completely against sanctions, for example.
Right.
So, how is it... so I guess that's among the confusions you hope to straighten out.
Right.
The relationship between international military power and economic exchange.
Sure. Well, and even broader cultural questions might come into play, right? The cultural context of the development of the market.
Yes.
And the diversity, we might say, of expressions of the market through the international economy.
Right.
So this is something too that isn't well thought out. Most people, when they think of globalization, they think of sort of economic imperialism.
It's true.
You Americanize the Bangladesh or whatever.
Right.
Or the French.
Right.
Let's say.
That's
a better example.
So if we're going to trade with the country, it's got to be like a carbon copy of the U.S. in some sense. It's got to have a constitution.
Whereas it seems just
SEC and what?
Never mind the Marines.
Yeah.
Whereas it's just the deepening of the division of labor. Right? One would think that these local distinctive features of economic activity would actually be brought out more deeply by globalization and not taken away. And so people tend to focus just on the superficial things, right? Oh, we have a Walmart or we have a McDonald's, but
your point is that globalization is often confused with homogenization.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
And you're saying that it's actually
so that's just one of the other confusions.
Yeah. Yeah, this idea that somehow trade is making everybody putting a Chuck E. Cheese on every corner and whatever. Yeah, There you go. You're also giving a seminar, or a small group seminar this week, right?
Right. I actually got moved into the corporate estate.
Right.
And so it'd be Tom Woods and I.
Yeah.
On it. Right, that's what you're referring to. Yeah.
And this brings up another confusion that's, I suppose, somewhat related to the globalization point, that people confuse capitalism.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that the kind of thing you're going to be... Well,
that'll be one thing, right, sure, but
yeah.
I think we'll just throw out a laundry list of topics that would come under this heading and explore them with the students. So we have fascism and programs of regulation and antitrust and mercantilism, so on and so forth. So it'll have international as well as domestic dimensions.
This actually is connected to something. Mises has some comments in, I forget now which book, but where he seems to indicate some greater degree of tolerance than you might expect towards the idea of forcing open markets abroad. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay.
I saw the post. Maybe it came up in the post that Ebling had on the Mises list.
Yeah.
Where he was talking about Mises's change of view. It's kind of uncharacteristically variable, or maybe perhaps that isn't what he was saying. Maybe he was saying that it depended on circumstances.
Yeah.
It was kind of historically contingent as to what the proper way to interrelate with other cultures happen to be.
Well, I mean, Guido often emphasizes the fact that to understand Mises, it's a mistake to read Mises through Rothbardian lens. I mean, he wasn't a for the lack of a better term, a doctrinaire libertarian.
That's right.
I mean, he was a utilitarian ultimately, right?
Well, not to start another controversy, but I'll accept that.
Yeah. Okay.
He's a very strange utilitarian.
Yeah.
That way.
But he tended to look at well, it's difficult because, of course, after reading Rothbard, then we all tend to look back at predecessors and say, well, how come he was inconsistent on this point or that point?
Right. Yeah, this is true.
But it's also true of reading Menger, actually, in light of boehm-bawerk, or boehm-bawerk in light of Mises.
Perennial problem.
Yeah,
this is true.
And you're going to talk, who are some more American Austrians that you're going to discuss besides Frank Fetter?
So it'll be Hazlitt.
Yeah.
So we'll go through Hazlitt's works and Benjamin Anderson.
Okay.
So the point of that lecture is to show the students that these ideas were alive, embodied in real scholars and public intellectuals, and practitioners, and so on, but they weren't institutionalized. They had no institutional support.
Yeah.
And because of that, we didn't see the blossoming of the Austrian school in that pre-war period.
What were the books, the Austrian books, that were responsible for the creation of the American Austrian school in the interwar period? Well, Mises hadn't been translated yet, had it?
No. It was Fetter. It was Fetter's book, his principal's book.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which first edition was 1904.
Okay.
And then the later edition of 1915, the more well-known edition that's still available. Davenport's work.
Davenport, of course.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I can't squeeze Davenport into that lecture. I mean, I kind of wanted to give the students the fuller view, right, of not just the scholars but the public intellectuals and so on.
Yeah. So you think we should wait on the Davenport
important
shirt?
It should come out with Fetter.
That's shirt number 20 or 21, something like that.
Yeah, Fetter first.
Okay.
Because they didn't get along either.
So what's your next project aside from teaching, which I assume absorbs you completely?
It keeps me pretty busy. Yeah, I think the next project is a publication of Mises' correspondence. So I think through the archive we're going to pull out his important correspondence and try to publish at least one volume. From that. What
a wonderful thought. And this would be post-war. I mean, after 1940.
It'll be a mixture, but right.
You won't do any translating, it just as English.
No, we'll have to have a translator.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Guido actually has been in and read the German correspondence, and so he's able to identify what would need to be translated.
Well, wouldn't that be something? And you think it's revealing enough to deserve?
Oh yes, it's very interesting material. Mm-hmm.
Did you have an example of somebody you corresponded with like economist, right? I mean, he.
Oh, it's more than that. It's pretty broad. The correspondence is fairly broad.
Yeah.
But it just some things of just historical interest, like his correspondence with Hayek.
Right.
So Hayek would write, about being bombed out in London, and then Mises would write back to him to keep a stiff upper lip and all that. And so is that kind of personal interest that exists in the archive, as well as I mentioned before, just insightful remarks on world events,
great,
various correspondence.
Well, good. So that's major. Are there other areas that you're researching right now?
Well, let's see. I've done some work. I have a few papers out for publication. One on statistical analysis, and whether it's used, what its role is in economics.
Yeah, going back to your early background, right?
Yeah, well, the background we all go through. And get a PhD.
Yeah.
So there's a piece on that, and I'm finishing up a revisions on a article on Japan.
Okay.
So,
yeah, that has been one of your interests. I think you wrote for Mises.org on that topic.
Right. Yeah, I did at the conference we had in Toronto in '99.
Yeah.
So that's when I did the first analysis of Japan.
Yeah.
And so I think now I got an article length treatment of it. It's pretty good, I hope.
How much time do you spend in the office?
In my office at work?
Yeah. It's all day, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's all day. Sure.
All day, every day.
Right.
These aren't professor hours, right?
No. No, most of it's funny, though, because since I am there all day, I see the professors that don't come in the morning, come in the afternoon, and the ones that come in the morning and aren't there in the afternoon. So you get kind of a rotation.
But so your door's always open to students.
Oh,
they're always there. Yeah. Are you glad you had a teaching school instead of a big research university?
It fits my...
your vocation?
Yes, vocation better. It's a good word for it, right?
Well, thank you for coming to the Mises University after so many years. How many years have you been teaching here?
At Mises U?
Yeah.
Let's see, 1988 was my first year.
Isn't that great? Yeah. So, a staple. Well, thank you for sharing your gifts with all the students here and for sharing your time with us on this podcast.
Well, thank you, Jeffrey, and thanks to the Institute.